Good Monday morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Huddle, and I apologize in advance. I have cough, so if my voice awkwardly cracks, just hang with me. Hopefully what I'm trying to say will eventually get out. There was a ton of news this weekend on Iran. Israel bombed the heck of Iran's oil depots, leaving these fumes of smoke, huge fireballs over Tehran. I'm sure you guys saw those videos over the weekend. There's talk about sending in some sort of special U.S. operation force to deal with the Iranian stockpiles. The Dow futures yesterday were tumbling as oil prices surged. And meanwhile, the son of the late Ayatollah Khomeini has been named his successor. We're going to talk about all of that on the show today. But guys, I have to tell you my first reaction to this when I learned about the Ayatollah's son taking the lead was, okay, Polymarket should probably start a trade about how long he's going to live. I know that's a terribly.
I think there was something the other day about betting on dead people getting killed. So
probably not a good idea.
I actually thought this is going to tell you how warped my brain is. I thought the only one who's excited about this is Marco Rubio. He's like, finally a job that I don't have.
There you go. For now, until there's another successor.
I mean, honestly though, my second thought was what yours was, which is this guy just put like a death sentence on his. Totally. As if he already didn't have one.
Yeah, absolutely. We are also going to discuss on the show Trump's new ultimatum to Republicans if they don't pass the Save America Act. We'll talk about Ken Martin, the DNC chief, being in the doghouse once again with his own party. We'll talk about the housing affordability crisis and the progressive push for rent control. But first, quick note on the weekend. Dan is in California, so he's going to, like I said yesterday, he's going to be grumpy this week, but he's in a good mood this morning, right, Dan?
A great mood. How can I be grumpy? I'm in Torrey Pines.
First day, Dan.
Yeah, no, you sleep when you're dead. It was 80 degrees. I'm going to play golf with our oldest son today at Torrey Pines. Beautiful day. How can I be grumpy?
There you go. How were the airport lines? That's the real question.
So I will say, when I woke up and saw Sean had texted the story about what's going on in Houston, I cringed. I am going home Saturday, and I'm hoping LAX is not that we don't have to get there now.
I would do this in between rounds, Dan, when you're sitting in the cart waiting for your son to hit. Yeah. I would sign up for Clear.
I have it. I was an early adopter, but I'm excited. It's a great week. Also, if you like sports, March Madness, kind of the conference tournaments are starting. Sean, Navy.
Dude, I was so bummed. I was driving home on a bus.
If you haven't seen it, Navy lost on a half-court shot yesterday.
With no time left. And the best part is they had gone down the court, 3.6 seconds, phenomenal layup for the go-ahead, 72-70, 3.6 seconds left on the clock. BU inbounds it, passes it to half court. This dude heaves the thing in for a three. They win by one, no time left.
Ooh.
I
mean, Rachel couldn't sleep last night. That's why she's coughing. She's verklempt. She's just,
Yeah, I was definitely on the edge of my seat throughout this game. No, not at all. I'm gonna let you guys do your basketball bro thing here, and then we will move on. But happy for you for March Madness, very much so.
Thank you for the country, for America,
and for America. There you go, sports, yay. Daybook. Let's look at the daybook really quick. 9:30 a.m. The G7 finance ministers have an emergency call to discuss the sharp rise in oil prices. But the big story here in the U.S. in terms of politics is House Republicans have their strategy retreat at Doral. Where else but other than Trump's Doral resort in Miami? The president's going to be delivering remarks there this afternoon. Guest speakers, Scott Jennings, Ben Shapiro, James Blair from the White House, Chris LaCivita, the president's former co-campaign chief from 2024. And like I said, the president at 3:30, he's going to do this roundtable with the lawmakers, and then 4:30, give a speech.
Sean, can I just ask, because LaCivita is going to be there, and
sure.
It's on a topic today. Trump is not endorsed in Texas yet. Should we be reading anything into this?
No. I wouldn't read anything into it. All right. Although I do think your broader point, though, is it's another attempt to press the flesh.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Because LaCivita will be there. He can go up and be like, hey, I mean, part of me wonders if if the president saw all the headlines and was like, felt like you're not going to put me in a corner. I don't know. Sean, you would know better
Well,
than I.
I
You're
also
talking
all
to
the
these people.
base is
Well, the base,
saying
right?
don't do it down there.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Wait,
Let's do.
I'll tell you, if you're corning, the longer this hangs out there.
That's why I ask.
Yeah.
Of course it is. Yep, I agree.
You want your hand, you want that hand on the buzzer ASAP. And the longer it takes out, the more people are calling from the base saying, and I talked to some people who had talked to Ken Paxton over the weekend. He feels good.
Well, that's it. It gives him energy. The longer Trump holds off, the more he can hammer away. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, a lot of the base really doesn't want, like, they're not expecting him to endorse Paxton necessarily, but they definitely don't want him to endorse Cornyn. And I think that I've over 8 years, this is probably in the top 3 or 4 issues that really will get people set off in a way that I haven't seen before.
And like you said, you've mentioned this, Sean, just very quickly. He doesn't want to water down the power of his endorsement, right? If Paxton doesn't drop out and ends up winning, by goodness, then it
remember he has the ghost of Alabama is in his back pocket, which is sort of Luther Strange, Mo Brooks, the idea of getting involved and then not coming through. So I think that's what the Paxton team is reminding him. We will win this. And then you will have owned the John Cornyn thing.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just do a quick word from our sponsors here. So if your New Year's resolution, guys, was to get better sleep and you are still struggling with that, I have a new solution for you this week. You'll never guess it. CBD from CB Distillery. Over 90% of their customers say they sleep better with CBD. And you can just imagine how much more energy you'd have to handle stress, to reach your goals if you were sleeping right. CB Distillery has options for more than just sleep. They also have things for stress relief, for mood, for pain after workouts. We've talked to you guys about the balm, right? The balm is great. And you can actually shop by benefits. So if you go to the website, look now, you can see product availability basically depends on where your state is. Everything from CB Distillery is premium quality, third-party tested, and free of artificial dyes and fillers. And they have more than 2 million happy customers and 100% money back guarantee. So if you're ready to start sleeping better, go to cbdistillery.com and use my code HUDDLE for 25% off. That's cbdistillery.com, code HUDDLE for 25% off.
I have to admit, every time I hear a balm, I think of the famous Seinfeld episode with the balm. Yes. All right. So here I am. I'm out in California, as I said, and you better believe it. I brought my Cozy Earth pajamas with me, and I didn't just bring the Cozy Earth pajamas. I brought the joggers because when I'm walking around after the show, it's still going to only be 6:30 in the morning here. I'm going to go for a walk, and I'm going to wear my Cozy Earth joggers, perfect for it. But I don't know about you. When I travel, you got to have good pajamas because nothing better than getting into bed after a long day and being comfortable when you're on the road. So we always talk about it. They have the candles, they have the blankets, pajamas, and so much more. As the weather's turning, don't forget to upgrade or make sure that you have not just the warm ones for the winter, but the cool ones for spring and summer. So go to Cozy Earth. Use the code HUDDLE for up to 20% off. That's CozyEarth.com. Use code HUDDLE for up to 20% off.
Maybe if I had the Cozy Earth joggers, I would actually get my butt out and moving to jog, which was my New Year's resolution 3 months ago. That still has not been fulfilled.
That's tough with the cough, though. Really tough with the cough.
Not with the cough. After the cough.
Yeah, it doesn't work well.
Definitely. All right, let's jump in here. A lot to get to today. So we're going to get to Trump's everywhere strategy when it comes to Iran, but just a couple of sort of updates on some of the headlines over the weekend. So U.S. diplomats, they've been evacuated from Saudi Arabia following this drone strike on the embassy. U.S. service member deaths now, unfortunately, at 7. There are reports about 1,200 Iranians that have been killed through this. And of course, the big chatter this morning is on gas prices because Dow futures tumbled yesterday. Oil prices surging more than 10%, exceeding $100 a barrel for the first time in over 4 years. I believe the national average right now for gas is like $3.45, which is much higher than it was, just a couple of weeks ago. And there's reporting this morning that the U.S. is upset with Israel for bombing these 30 fuel depots, worried that this could sort of repel ordinary Iranians, that they need to sort of rise up to take control of the government. But let's start with the oil prices here, Sean, because the president is saying that the short-term pain will be worth it when Iran's oil is in the hands of a more friendly leader, that the costs will actually drop rapidly. Will the nation buy that, Sean? Like, is that an argument that can resonate when people are concerned about this?
Like I say all the time, it depends on for how long. If it's 2 or 3 weeks of gas going up and we get a long-term benefit, sure. I think, as I've said before, there's the cost of oil, which I think the president's trying to combine the affordability issue, and I get that. There's also the security issue, which is not having Iran have the ability to attack us, our assets, our people, is a huge deal. And by the way, I've played these clips on my show all the time. Hillary Clinton, Kamala. I mean, the threat of Iran and the desire to take it out and regime change has been something that has been bipartisan for decades now. Hillary Clinton famously said, when I'm president, mark my word, I will take out Iran. I will, drop. So he's doing what leaders have said that they would do for decades. I also think the hedge against China is huge. So yes, I mean, to some degree, but look, politically speaking, we're in an election year. I keep saying this. If it drags on, I think that's going to be a problem because people want certain things, but they, people like me look up the street and say, okay, how much is gas? And that's your indicator. If it's high, it's going to be a problem. Yeah. And for a lot of Americans, if you're an Uber driver, if you're, running to do a lot of, you're shuttling your kids back and forth, and that really impacts your bottom line, it's going to make a big difference.
Dan, I saw you squirming when he mentioned Hillary Clinton and Democrats wanting to regime change here. Is he right about that?
I mean, Democrats never talked about outright invading Iran. I mean, so look,
bombing it, yes.
I mean, look, the country is unified. She's a bad actor. They're unified. The Putin's a bad actor. You don't hear us saying that we're going to go into Moscow. So, I mean, look, here's the problem. It's not just oil prices. Sean is right. We could get out in 3 weeks. Oil prices will tumble down and i.e. gasoline prices come down. Here is the bigger problem that you're now seeing more and more people talk about, which they've always warned about. All these industries need energy, whether it's the airlines, farmers, manufacturing, etc. As energy prices skyrocket, all these companies now are going to absorb the costs. And because they make, long-term purchases and stuff, you're going to pass those costs on. So what are we now talking about? The potential that around April, May, and June, you're going to get shock inflation numbers that are going to start to come out. Now, Trump will say, oh, it's temporary. Well, guess what? Sean and I keep saying, by the summer is about when you bake in your views of, do I feel economically better or not? Yeah. And so I think the problem is they have got to get out of this fast, because otherwise they did not say to the country for the last couple months, we're going to go to war and there's going to be a lot of economic pain. They never said that. Just like with tariffs, Trump didn't walk around in 2024 saying, hey, it's going to be a rough year or two while my tariffs kind of work itself out. He always brags about, strength, ease, and dominance. And so I think for him, his everywhere strategy, the problem is he's starting to look tone deaf. He's telling the country something that they don't believe. So I think it's a huge problem. It's huge.
So the energy secretary, Chris Wright, he was on Fox News this weekend arguing that the oil shortage, the oil price changes have nothing to do with the shortage, that there's actually a lot of oil going around the world and that this is all fears and that people just need to sort of calm down. But obviously that doesn't matter if people are paying more at the pump.
It's not true either.
Okay. Oh, that's not true.
It's just not true.
I'm not an oil expert. I will be honest on that. But yes, he was making that argument that if people calm down, the oil prices will come down. So.
Well, but here's the problem with that, Rachel. Yes, you're right. There is oil sitting in the Middle East. What are they afraid of? Their boats being blown up. That's not like irrational, fear of a hangnail. That's irrational fear that your asset and the oil itself will not make it to port.
And the president is very much pressuring the companies to get their boats moving. Let's go.
And that's not happening.
But can I just
say one thing? Like, here's the problem with what Chris Wright's trying to do. There may be some esoteric technical reason that he's right. I mean, I'm with you, Rachel. I'm not an oil expert. I'm not an energy. So, yes, there may be a supply, but to the average person out there, I'm not sure that's the argument I would lead with, right? Because again, it's like technically he might, and I'm sure he is. He's got a team that's very smart, and they're probably like, okay, there's actually a supply issue But for the average person, I mean, it's like there's a much better place to be, which is how are you fixing this? Because that's what people want, is how are you getting those prices down, not trying to explain why they happen.
And don't forget, as the Federal Reserve said in the last several years, 38% of Americans don't have $300 in case of an emergency. If to Sean's point, if you drive a truck and your gas bill goes up $30 or $40 a week over the course of a month, there are a bunch of people in this country who cannot afford that. So when you tell people kind of suck it up, Buttercup, it is a huge problem. They're like, no.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm angry.
Dan, you just mentioned this notion of like, can we get out of this fast, right? To get things back normal. But this sort of, it's a good segue to what's going on with the Ayatollah son. Am I saying his name right? Is it Manjaba Kamini? I don't know. So the president says,
you won't have to say it for long.
I was going to say, he says that this guy is not going to be around for long. He told ABC News, yeah, he's not going to last long. That's actually the exact quote. But the fact that they chose this guy who is sort of a regime insider, has a close relationship with the Revolutionary Guard, like he's he's his father's son, right? Like, isn't this concerning, Sean, that like they are not in any way showing that they're ready to sort of repent or go in a different direction? They're doubling down on the same sort of thing, which makes me think this is going to go on for a while.
Well, it will, but also, I mean, look, there's the thing that's interesting is that elective council is 88 people big. Like the dynamic, they weren't, I mean, you probably would have gotten killed if you had said, hey, let's go a little to the left and moderate a bit. And it may take one. I mean, it's like, remember when we went through the House Speaker race? And you're at some point you're like, okay, guys, we're not going in the right direction here.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just need to get it out of your system. And who knows, maybe they're setting this guy up where they're like, we don't like the son anyway. Let's make him the guy, knowing full well what's going to happen. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, this is not like, for a million reasons, this will not be the end of the story. We're not going to come to a deal with this guy. He's not going to come to a deal with us. I honestly hate to say it, but I mean, it's literally just a matter of time before we take him out some way and then figure out, okay, who's the next one?
Last word, Dan, anything else you want to mention about this everywhere strategy? I mean, you're talking about on our text chain, like the president saying we're winning, and then he's out there talking about oil, and then he's out there talking about boots on the ground. Like, and this typically serves him well when he goes out there and talks a lot. But Americans in a time of war, there's a certain temperament, I guess, that people expect. Like, final word on that.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's twofold. I just think, one, I keep going back to this. They did not lay the groundwork the last several months, weeks leading up to this. And so it just feels totally chaotic. Trump also made the comment this weekend, he didn't care if Iran ultimately has a democracy. Well, remember, his initial statement at the start of the war in that famous video was for the people to rise up and take advantage of this opportunity. If you have a president now saying, one, I'm going to pick your next leader. Two, I don't care if you have democracy or not. Three, we're going to blow your country to hell. Like, I think there's a problem both in Iran trying to incentivize people to take hold of their country. And two, there's just whiplash in this country about, hey, it's going to be over soon. No, it may go 6 to 8 weeks. No, we're winning. But, you know, as Sean said, they're picking a new regime that doesn't seem to be different. We may put boots on the ground. I just think that his pinprick, dominate the headlines, get in there is causing, it looks chaotic. And I think for the first time in his 10 years, Sean, I don't think this is serving him well, the total lack of unified message across government whatsoever.
Quick response.
Well, again, that's where I made this point last week. I think that they did a really good job day one, getting everyone out there fanning across. I do think there is a bit of message discipline, you know, to this point about what the goal is, how we're doing it, because I do think the American people still are willing to do things in support of our long-term safety.
Sure.
There is an affordability question. There's no question about it. But I think if you can explain to people, hey, look, we're taking out a threat that's killed a number of people, and here's what we're doing. We want to make sure we keep terrorism on their shores, not ours. There is a strong argument for that. But I think, again, they probably have much better polling as far as what resonates more. I just think that, like, getting everyone to say, this is what we say, and this is it.
Yeah.
Well, and it goes to this next topic, which is, I mean, now So he hasn't said it out loud publicly, but there are all these stories that in order to secure the assets, we are talking about with the Israelis putting troops on the ground.
Yeah,
Which, go ahead, Rachel.
let me just like give a little over of this. So Marco Rubio was asked about this in a recent congressional briefing, whether Iran's enriched uranium will it be secured, and he said people are going to have to get it. And yes, Dan, you're right. Like people is apparently maybe us. I mean, they're talking about U.S. Israeli sort of joint operation of some sort to see this stockpile. And this means, I mean, they're saying it's going to be it's not going to be like a big force, but like a smaller.
First they said no force. Now they're saying
Right.
it's not going to be a big force.
Well,
You're right.
he never said no.
You're
He
right.
said he wouldn't rule. He didn't rule anything out. That's
For sure. But like we've talked about on the show, this notion of boots on the ground being the sort of bright red line that in conventional wisdom is like crossing the Rubicon. And I know there's like CIA, assets on the ground already, et cetera. But like that's different, right? Because it's pretty covert than actually sending in, troops like this where we're doing it. There's going to be a lot more coverage. I mean, it sounds like this kind of operation is a lot trickier because this is like underground. It could be protected by.
But it's not just one site. They're talking about, I mean, Iran has dozens of different, because look, they're not dumb. They didn't put everything in one place. It's spread out all over the country. So the moment we start putting all these tactical teams on the ground to guard them, you better believe, just like in Iraq, they become targets. And this again goes to, he didn't talk about for the last month, we're going to have to ultimately send troops in to secure our victories. He never talked about it. So now you're kind of leaning into, well, it's going to be small and it's going to be temporary. Well, you told me 2 weeks ago, no way. Now you're saying, yes, it may be. And it goes to this, what are we doing? What is the goal?
Sean, are you worried about that?
Well, look, I think, as I've said with everything else, I think that the answer is going to be, it depends. If we talk about a group of special forces that go in for a recon mission to take control, that's very different than like the entire 10th Mountain Division going in for a sustained effort. We start building, forward operating bases or something like that, and it starts to mirror Iraq or Afghanistan. We're going to have some. You talk about getting the yips. We'll get the yips. I think if it is extraction forces going in, securing sites, pulling stuff out with the folks from, I assume there'd be a little like again, International Atomic Agency, FERC, or something like that. Like getting those guys to come in, I think is a very different operation and a view than, hey, we're sending in and we're staging a bunch of troops. That's where I think you're going to see, because the American people, again, are going to judge based on what they see.
Right.
So if there's these huge convoys coming in and that's what they're seeing images of, it's very different than, something landing, dropping a bunch of guys off who go secure a site and pull some stuff back.
But Sean, wouldn't you agree if we send in, let's say, a few thousand net, right? Because you're securing 10 or 12 sites. You're going to have to provide cover for them, right? Mm-hmm. So you're not just sending them in with a couple of scientists, right? You're going to have forces ready to go in case the Iranians come after them, right? So, I mean, I just think, again, to me, it is shoot first, kind of sell it later. It's all amorphous. It's all kind of, and I get it, fog of war. Like, you don't want to tell everyone we're coming in on Friday with these people and, have a welcome ceremony. But I just think we are.
The one X factor, by the way, is the Israelis. How much are they willing to commit, especially on the ground, to go in and do stuff? And how much can we sell that as, hey, we're providing cover for the Israelis. They're going in to do the hard work. That's going to be, I think there's still that to be honest with you. I think that's the one option that would be a lot more palatable on frankly, all around.
Well, and don't forget, President Trump said this weekend, too, it's going to be a we decision when to end the war with Israel, not the United States, he said. We, Netanyahu and I, which he doesn't speak like that very often. And it goes to, again, whose main focus was this to go in, right? It was the Israelis. And so all politics is local. I just don't see the upside to this. Again, politically, we're a political show. We are not talking about,
And look, I say this over and over again to the point where it's literally a broken record, right? Or an MP3. But like, if we're having this discussion, both if the oil prices are $4 a gallon, if there are troops continuing to surge or stage in the Middle East to deal with this, even in May around Memorial Day, I think that's gonna seal a fate, politically speaking, that's very different if by the end of April we're out and prices are going down.
Do you think April 1st? Do both of you think April 1st we're still in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised
that's 21 days
going on Memorial Day. It just seems so complicated. It seems so
I think the difference, Dan, is I think the bigger question is May 1st, right? April 1st is 21 days from now. I don't see how you get everything in and out.
So they are talking about, if in the next 4 weeks, if this continues, gas prices will break $5. If we go into the summer driving season,
wow,
and gas prices are at $5,
yeah, no.
Oh boy,
right.
Oh,
well, you enter Memorial Day weekend. That's what I'm saying. The summer driving season. But I will say, I can see a scenario. You're talking about world leaders right now hitting the equivalent of the World Strategic Economic Reserve. If there's some relief that can happen, that's going to help. But it can mitigate it, and I get it.
All right, guys, let's move on to the Save America Act. Heat rising on this. So the president issued this sort of ultimatum to his own party, actually warned Sunday that he won't sign any bill into law until the Save America Act is passed, alongside a ban on mail-in voting and a ban on men and women's sports. I'm sorry, transgender men and women's sports, and transitioning surgeries for kids, a ban on that. So I should note here that bills automatically become a law after 10 days if the president does nothing, if they're passed by both chambers. So we don't have clarity that he would actually veto something, but it does in some ways seem kind of like a hollow threat. I mean, he's not going to veto a DHS funding bill to reopen DHS or veto a bipartisan housing bill. At least I don't think he will. But this sort of jump in the rhetoric, that the heat in the rhetoric definitely signifies this pressure from the right, like reaching this boiling point on Senate Republicans. I was watching the traffic on Twitter this weekend. Tons of influencers, conservative influencers, tweeting the names of Senate Republicans they thought were standing in the way. And then you'd hear the Senate Republicans pushing back, saying it's not me. And then, Mike Lee's defending John Cornyn, which is not something you see every day. But John, like, you talk about how you don't like division in your party. And I'm wondering, is this starting to become counterproductive given how much infighting you're seeing in the Republican Party over this issue?
Well, it's the division that we want. In that, I mentioned Ken Paxton being a real sort of potential lightning rod. The SAVE Act may be, outside of border security, the number one issue that unites MAGA world right now. It's sort of like, why are we doing all this if we're not going to actually secure our elections, if we're not going to make sure that we protect things going forward? And the excuses are lame, to be blunt. I mean, the problem that I think most people have with the Senate right now is this notion of throwing your hands up and saying, well, we just can't even try. They're not even trying. And that's what frustrates a lot of people, where the Thune's answer is, well, we haven't done it in a long time, so therefore we shouldn't try. People are frustrated. They think that there's a refusal to even do anything to advance the agenda. So I think the president's right on this. Obviously, I think, to your point, he would sign a DHS funding bill, but we need to make this a bigger priority. And I think that our members need to get out there, have their voices heard. You've started to see enough of the members slowly start to come around. But it's one thing to get rid of the filibuster. The talking filibuster, to me, is at least an opportunity for the Senate Republicans to show that they get it and that they're willing to do something about it. It is not an either or right now.
Do you do not, it sounds like, accept the premise that this isn't going to go anywhere? Like, I guess maybe I come at this from the premise that I really don't think this is ever going to pass the Senate. And so if you're coming at it from that premise, it's like, well, shouldn't you be attacking Democrats in a midterm year instead of each other? But
you are attacking Democrats. Mm-hmm. I think the broader argument is definitely focused on them. Mm-hmm. But I think that the odds, if I were putting my money on something, I would say it's still a very uphill battle, but I think we're making progress, and the pressure is what's getting people to move. So I don't think I would want to let my foot off the gas right now. I do think that exposing the Democrats' hypocrisy on this issue when it comes to citizenship, when it comes to voter ID, is something that is a great political argument.
And Democrats, by the way, they're not afraid of this. I hear your argument, Sean, that you think that this is good for them in terms of, the 80% of people support, the showing voter ID for registering to vote. But Schumer is out there this weekend saying, basically, you make my day. He called this legislation Jim Crow 2.0. He said that, there's going to be gridlock in the Senate and it's going to be your fault because you're making this ultimatum. Like, Dan, Dems are not afraid. They're not afraid of this issue. They're like leaning into it, which despite the polling,
Look, I think there's two things about it. I think one, Trump's Truth Social on this was like a cry to the base, right? The base is angry about Iran. There's all this confusion. So let me throw the most red of red meat issues at you.
The base isn't really mad at him over Iran, but never.
Well, look, no, I know these polls say that 80% of Republicans. Right. Okay. Well, I haven't seen 90. I've seen 80. But still, I said this to you guys last week. If you did a intensity test of how supportive are you, a lot of them are holding their nose. They're always going to be with Trump through thick and thin, but they don't like this. SAVE Act, they all unify. I think here's the problem, right? The rest of the country is not sitting there saying, God, the elections are always stolen. They don't believe this, right? They just don't. And by the way, there is no proof of it. And two, Iran, it's all chaos. You're not focused on me. You're focused on you, your base, or, Iran. And so for Democrats, it is a chance to say, we are focused on you. They are focused on other. And in a midterm, it's always a referendum on the president, almost always. So we're not winning. We're winning because Republicans are politically losing. Now, it is what it is. You can say Democrats stink, but right now, the Republicans have huge problems. And this to me is insane. You're asking the Republican Party to end the filibuster. That's really what you're going to, over a voter bill for something that is a total conspiracy theory for the last 6 years. I mean, go ahead and make our day. I know what you're going to say, Sean. There's just no proof.
Democrats did something similar. They put pressure on their own party.
A guy went to jail last week, by the way, in Wisconsin for voting in 4 presidential elections.
John, how many people have voted?
Wait. Hold on. Just check out the sleight of hand. There's no proof. I give you proof and you go, how many? So it's no proof. No one does it except when I show it to you. Then everyone on the Dems side in the media
Hold on a sec. One out of 180 million is 150 million is like blow the whole system up.
There still is look, like
I know
we can get into this for a long time, but like there still is the threat of it, right? I mean, like I don't.
How many banks get robbed every day?
Unreasonable to show your ID to show that you're an American citizen.
I find that,
guys. All right,
I'll tell you what. Talk about Democrats.
I would run the ads for you if you should center your reelection, Republicans, on Iran. We had to go in. And on voting fraud, please.
Here's what I'll tell you, though.
Please,
here's what
I'll write to that
super chat. And then we got to move on very quickly.
I would just say this: the one thing that Dan may be right on obviously on Democrats, and to some degree, a lot of it may not be but for the base, you want to get people motivated now, going into a midterm where Trump is not on the ballot. They need a reason to fight. And right now, if you can't pass the SAVE Act, and you're saying as a member of Congress, come reelect me. I need to pass the Trump agenda, and I'm not going to do the basics. Bye-bye.
All right, let's talk about Ken Martin.
Thank you.
Come on, Iran voting act.
Okay. So, Ken Martin facing new criticism once again from fellow Democrats who are questioning his fundraising know-how. They are questioning his organizing skills, his leadership skills in general, second-guessing this decision to keep this autopsy from 2024 secret. I have to say, when I read this story, which was in Axios last night, I rolled my eyes because Democrats have been saying this for a year now, back from
none of it's new,
like whining about this rift with David Hogg, the progressive who ended up leaving. I mean, like, oh, woe is me. This job is so hard. And I remember asking very senior Democrats at the time, are you going to get rid of him? Like, clearly he doesn't have the stomach for it. And the answer was, no, of course not. We would never do that. And yet here we are again. Dan, Democrats are obviously on fire politically, regardless of what the DNC is doing. Will this really matter in the midterms?
It may not. Well, it may matter in the midterms because we have no money. And so the DSCC and the DCCC are basically at parity, which is amazing, with their Republican counterparts. The two places we're getting really crushed are outside groups and the DNC versus the RNC. And I think we may win in spite of Ken Martin, but I just think the problem is he doesn't like raising money. He's not good at it. And once your brand becomes this toxic, Sean knows this. When you call a prospective donor, donors want to be with winners. They don't want to be with losers.
Yeah.
And so I think it would not be surprising if he either is forced to step down or, which we've done in the past, he's layered. They name a co-chair, like back in the day. I remember Ed Rendell got named. And that person goes out and is the public face of raising money, going on television. You get to keep your title, so you're not humiliated, but you become neutered.
You really think they'll do that this late in the cycle?
No, I think they'll do it after 2026.
Okay, I
going
see.
into the presidential.
That makes sense.
I do not think he will. He may still be DNC chair, but he will have less power by this time in 2027.
Dan, can I ask you about your pronouns?
Yes, please.
Who's they?
So that's a great question. So I think the people that will ultimately organize this are Jeffries, Schumer, and those who want to run for president. And there is still an not intelligentsia. There are certain power brokers still within the party that hold enough influence to work with the Donna Brazils, the Leah Dautries, the others that are still in the building. But you're right. It's still a Harris-Biden crew that are there. Yep.
The reason I say that is, we were joking about the Iranian Election Council being 88 people. The RNC, we affectionately call it the 168. When you are the party out of power, the president, when you're the party with the president makes a decision, says, this is the new chair, the walls will be orange and the carpets will be gold and whatever. And that's what happens. You run it. In fact, the political director of the White House is the de facto chair of the party. The problem, and the reason I asked Dan that question is that if you're Ken Martin, you're elected, you got a term, and only that governing body of the DNC can get rid of you. And as long as you're playing the game right, making sure that the care and feeding, one of the smart things that Ken Martin did is he has this stipend with the little money that he does have, where he gives, I think it's $17,500 to every state party. And the idea is, okay, well, if you're a state party chairman right now in, who cares where, and you have a hard time and suddenly you've got an infusion of cash, are you really going to vote to get rid of the guy that's giving you the pipeline in favor of someone that you don't know will give you that pipeline of cash every month? He is smart to do that. I will say the dumbest thing that he's done, and Dan and I have both said this for different reasons, Ken Martin should have months ago brought in a council of elders, of potential people who are running, and said, for the good of the party, I need you to be here to help me raise money, do a series of events, whatever. He has still not done that. And that is defiant. To me, it's like when two people like Dan and I can both give you the same piece of advice and you refuse to acknowledge, do something simple like that, it shows that your management style is pretty off.
Do you think that changes, Dan, after he sees these sort of headlines that people are agitating?
I think he digs it from all accounts. He's totally insecure.
Yep.
He digs in and he goes and attacks who's doing this, not to Sean's point or all of ours. There's structural problems that have to change. The trend lines just cannot continue. They're going to have to start laying people off soon. The DNC has no money. Wow. It has no money.
Never good going into the midterms. Okay, guys, let's talk about housing challenges here, because America is, everybody knows, facing this sort of affordability crisis when it comes to one of the most fundamental aspects of the American dream, and that is owning a home. With the backing of the White House, the Senate this week is going to be passing this bipartisan bill that strives to build, baby, build in a way. It incentivizes construction. It incentivizes restoring sort of aging houses and abandoned buildings, expediting environmental reviews. But in New York and a lot of these high cost areas where there are more renters than owners, the focus has actually turned to rent control. Mamdani, you guys know, rose to victory on this promise. Freeze the rent. That was the campaign promise, right? But while a lot of those proposals, they might have good intentions behind them, they can sometimes lead to bad results, and not just sometimes, a lot of times. I mean, if you look at a lot of these cities, doing rent control, they cap it below inflation increases, which sets the property owners back tremendously. They have to pay the mortgage, they've got to pay the property taxes, maintenance, improvements, and sometimes they end up not renting at all because of all these restrictions. Sean, you are a rental property owner yourself. What are some of
Very
these
kind word.
what are some of these unintended consequences of rent control? Because we're gonna, I mean, there's a movement that way, not just in New York, but with some progressive cities across the country. What are some of the unintended consequences of those?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I bought my first home in 1999, and it was through a first-time homeowner program, and it was like the equity in that helped me buy the next one. I still own the first house that I moved into. It wasn't like I went out to be some kind of rent control guy, but it has given me that the owning property is I think one of the greatest keys to the American dream. Like, you build equity, it's generational wealth that you can hand off. And what Democrats are doing right now is trying to stifle that. You know, Rachel, you said this. I don't really make a ton of money off any of my properties at all. In fact, this was our long-term retirement. We own the place that my wife lived in as well. And so they don't make money. Like, I mean, because if you think about the monthly mortgage, condo fee in the case of a couple of them, that goes up tremendously as well. It's not about the monthly it's about the long term, the equity that you build. And if you turn off that ability to just pay the bill, right? I mean, I honestly, like, I wouldn't, I'd have to sell the property. And again, what do you get? You literally go in reverse, because who ends up buying it? Institutional investors, people right now. You'll kill the ability for a lot of people to do what I did, which is start to create some generational wealth, start to build some equity that they can use to either buy a future house, to help with their kids' education. My parents did that. That's literally how I got through college. They had bought some condos and then refurbed them and sold them. You will cut that off. If people can't pay the basic mortgage on an investment property, then they're not going to do it anymore. And this is where, again, what I love about Congress and local people is that everybody wants to tell everyone else what to do with their money, and most of them have no experience in this.
So in many ways, this is sort of a failed experiment that has already been tried and actually abandoned. If you go to St. Paul, Minnesota, voters there authorized rent controls that capped rent at like 3% growth, I believe, with no exception for inflation, by the way. Construction in the area slowed. Developer interest sort of dried up. Their requests for building permits dropped something like 80%, and property values ultimately decreased. And less than a year later, the city rolled it back. Dan, I'm wondering, like, are progressive Democrats, are they taking heed of these sorts of examples that didn't work, or is this a base play that doesn't, heed reason at this point?
Look, I think it was a base play. But here's the thing. There's this whole raging fight in the Democratic Party between what they call the abundance agenda, which is that you should have an abundance of things, abundance access to things, or this idea of socialism, of the government controlling, setting price, with caps and government grocery stores, et cetera. And one of the things that's been this under the radar story is that Mamdani has begun to embrace with President Trump the idea of we need to build more. And I think lost in that is this idea that freezing rents is not a long-term solution to anything. Sean made the point about, inflation. It doesn't allow for adjusting as the cost of goods and services go. I mean, look, to buy the land, to construct something, to then run the maintenance on it, it often costs more than these rent freezes allow. So you get a lot of these buildings that are not good. By the way, classic Democratic issue, NIMBY, not in my backyard. People say, well, I don't want that housing next to me. I go put it somewhere else. And it does not incentivize developers to do anything about it. And so I think what you're now seeing in the Democratic Party is this idea that we need to get rid of the red tape that we have primarily built up. It is so expensive and time consuming to get the permitting to build in a lot of these cities. New York is a classic example, that you need to make it easier for people to build more and have greater supply. That in the long run, trying to use the government to freeze the free market and prevent the rise of costs is not sustainable. And Mamdani is kind of starting to back off of some of this And so I think as Democrats fight about 2026 and 2028, what are we going to focus on? What are our solutions? You're starting to see signs that some of these socialist ideas are just not, people know they're great campaign slogans. They're not great in practice. And I think, you may see some activity on these, private equity and hedge funds buying up, hundreds and hundreds of properties. There does seem to be some bipartisan support for that. Thank you, Donald Trump. But I do think the idea of rent caps are just not smart. And you're seeing more and more Democrats beginning to realize that.
I mean, price controls in general, it's just price controls are just anti-American in general. I mean, it's just it's so against our society.
The fundamental thing that's so funny is they want to put the price control on one side, right? So when I was just looking for it, it was on the counter the other day. When Alexandria sends me the once a year, here's how much we're increasing your property taxes. They don't cap it. Like the city council just votes, hey, we're increasing the rate per thousand this much. So again, what am I supposed to eat that every year? What, like they want to cap what you can grow at, but they want to cap what they're going to raise the property rate. So the fundamental thing that I think is interesting about this is, one, Alexandria as a city, and I think a lot of cities could do that if they're not, has a program that helps first-time owners get into a condo or to a low, and that's the thing, is that everyone thinks that you deserve to buy a house right away. Maybe the first step is to buy a small townhouse, to buy a condo, you build some equity, you use that for the next step. That's frankly what I did. And there's nothing wrong with that, where you have to take the first step. The other thing is, from a federal government standpoint, the VA program, I think, is excellent, right? It helps veterans, low to nothing down, really assistance. You could do a similar program for first-time homeowners where you maintain a certain credit score. So this isn't going back to 2008, but you actually incentivize that aspect of it. But this is where I think, again, that side of the ledger is where we should be focused, not trying to cap stuff that hurts people from investing. And to Dan's point, you start telling me that I'm losing money, it makes it harder to then want to improve the property to keep it up. Yeah. Right. So it's every time the government gets involved and caps something, there's that old saying, you get less of what you tax and more of what you don't. And so when you tax it, you're going to get less improvements. You're going to get less investment. You're going to get less. Let the private sector solve this by incentivizing first-time homeowners to get in, because even in Section 8 housing, the studies show that when you give home ownership to people, that actually improves the area. They take more pride in it because it's theirs. That's where the government should be focused its efforts on, not capping stuff.
Well, and by the way, in half these rent-controlled areas in New York City, Mondani got killed for this. You have people with lots of money in rent-controlled properties. You have Mondani whose assets are like 1.9 million. People could say, oh, that's not a lot of money in New York City. Well, yeah, it still is. And he's in a rent-controlled building. You're like, so then what are you going to try to do? Regulate people's incomes? To say, oh, it can only be so much. Well, what happens if you get a bonus? What happens if you have a good year? Do you have to get out then? You're going to kick people out? I mean, it's just trying to use the government.
The side of the ledger the government should be focused on is to get people moving in the right direction.
Correct.
Build an abundance. And by the way, this issue is one of those sleeper ones that we talk about all the time. Social media, AI, data centers, and what they're doing on housing. Because young people in particular, I think on both sides, but particularly on the Republican side, want to see some solutions. It was something that Charlie Kirk was really passionate about before he was killed.
But my question is, does the Democratic Party realize this? Or Dan, you're saying you think they're starting to pivot on this and go back
because here's the problem.
It's an easy campaign promise that doesn't make sense, of course, but it's
you can't use the government to freeze it and not build more housing. You have to create more housing. You have to build
Dan, the problem too is that there's a balance. In Alexandria, go down Route 1. All they've done is continue to build up. Then what do? You put more pressure on schools and roads. And I mean, there is a balance, and they've got to figure this out. But I would say this, the other disparity in the parties is these Democrats rule from large urban cities, right? Yep. And Republicans, in a lot of ways, are looking at people who are buying a first-time home that's not necessarily in a city and have different needs. And that's why there's also a different approach to how they view this.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, let's take some questions. Obviously, we're going to be following the affordability issue with rent and houses here for a while. But let's take some questions here. Last 10 minutes of the show.
Okay,
I can't read that. Can it?
It's Russia attacked the U.S. top officials with microwave weapon causing Havana syndrome, also supplying Iran with intelligence of military positions. Meanwhile, Ukraine provides drones to the U.S. versus Shaheds. Will this impact the Russia relations? That's a great story or great question, because it's not just the microwave stuff, but Iran's foreign minister yesterday confirmed that Russia has been supplying them with intelligence targets and insight into U.S. activity. So I do think that's going to really set back any sense of relationship. And the second that it's proven that there's a correlation between something Iran did and hitting a U.S. asset or, God forbid, a person, I think that's really going to set things back.
Yeah, that story this weekend was, and there were multiple stories about specific targets that the Russians have been providing because they have satellite and on the ground sources. And so some of these sites that have been hit in the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and others, it didn't make the news at the time, is where our air defense technology is based. So these satellite systems rely on a web of installations that track incoming drones and weapons and whatever. And the Russians are providing the Iranians with coordinates and other intelligence. It is crazy. I also said this last week, and I just want to keep reemphasizing it. Every argument that the right is making for Iran, you can make about Ukraine. And that is just the total, just kind of cross purposes here. Okay, we got to get out of Ukraine. We shouldn't be spending any more money. We shouldn't be doing this. But by the way, Putin's awful. Putin's terrible. It's crazy.
Let's take another question. Okay, Republican lady. Hello, good morning. Question for Sean. As a military man, what did you think about the brouhaha over Trump's cap at the dignified transfer ceremony? Was that a misstep for Trump or much ado about nothing?
So as I'll just say, as an automatic disclaimer, any views that I share are mine and mine alone, not those of the Department of Defense or the Department of the Navy. He wore a white hat that said USA on it. He's the commander in chief, and he was saluting. I think people look for any issue, like to wear a hat that says USA on a windy. I mean, I think again, people are looking for reasons to nitpick on Trump. So to me, this is like, there's a point at which it was a dignified transfer of 6 lost souls that were being honored and returned to their homeland. And I think to sort of, I don't know, like I said, I just find it like there is nothing that we can't find an issue with these days. And it shouldn't have been about him or his hat. It should be about them and their return.
Imagine if, I was just going to say, like, if President Obama did that, I mean,
this is the thing, right? So one of the reasons that like everything now is fodder, go back to Barack Obama got attacked for wearing a tan suit in the summer in Washington, and it was leading cable news for days, right? It's one of the reasons Michelle Obama just outright hates, the right and Donald Trump on some of this stuff is he never stopped attacking. He went after Barack Obama for playing golf on the weekends. Let that sit in right now. Right? So Democrats
didn't replace the divots, Dan. Didn't replace the divots.
All right. Let's take another question. Thanks, Republican lady. All right. Here's Mark. Question. Does the administration understand how power is distributed in Iran and how hard a regime, I think he's trying to say a regime change is? Iran has been preparing for this for a long time. We talked about this a little bit and how deep their bench goes and broad their bench goes. There's a lot of members of the regime that you got to go through to get to a leader that potentially could be an ally of the U.S., right?
Well, and the other problem is it's not just the main government. It's the local governments that, the local, like kind of our version of governors and city councils and whatever. It's all part of the same system. And I think there has always been this question about whether you can just bomb it into the Stone Ages and have them give up. It didn't really work in the long run in Afghanistan. It didn't on some level work in Vietnam, where we literally tried to burn the jungle down and just firepower from above. But we couldn't get the local population on our side in a lot of instances. And so it's a huge outstanding question. can we just keep dropping thousands and thousands of missiles and bombs and get the people on the ground to change?
Yeah, look, it's funny. There's a thing in the U.S. we call it coup planning, which is continuity of government. Iran definitely has a pretty extensive coup plan. They know who's going to lead, and they figure out all these different ways. I assume that part of we were talking about in the lead up to this, the briefings that Trump was getting, and this is how they plan, and their contingency operations aren't some kind of secret. But you've seen this now. The council met, they elected somebody new, and to Dan's point, it goes layers deep, not just at the federal level. One of the big mistakes that I think we've made around the world is sometimes assuming that like your government is like our government. You'll react like we react. And we've made a big mistake in China. Obviously, when we looked at Afghanistan, we thought of it as like a real country as opposed to a bunch of tribes. I think that's one of the things we've got to be careful in Iran is understanding how it operates, and that it's not like 50 states with governors and a bunch of senators that go to a capital. I mean, each of these institutions has a unique form of governance. It's not necessarily even government. That being said, I think part of this is to recognize that at some point there are people in that orbit that want to make a deal and are much more forward thinking. The current son there is not one of them, but even the former president, I think was definitely a little bit more, had a lot more potential as somebody that we could play with. So, but to your larger question, how does the power get distributed? I'm hoping to God that there are some people close that understand some of these power centers.
Well, and one thing that came out this weekend too, as we're learning more about that decapitation Saturday, is it now sounds like there was a group of people, to Sean's point, that we thought we had relations with who might be willing to cut a deal. Turns out they were in the same building, not in the room, kind of in a holding room. So clearly these people were part of the broader regime. Again, amazing how much the Mossad and CIA has infiltrated. The bombs took those people out too. It would be an unbelievable irony if we killed not only the regime we wanted gone, but the future regime that we had kind of in the wings.
Let's take another question. Okay, Bumps Johnson, good morning. Question: should the government seek to regulate AI on social media as videos and posts run rampant, making absurd claims, from a B-2 bomber being shot down to Jerusalem being hit by missiles?
I mean, it's so no, you can't regulate this stuff. You just have to ask yourself the source of what it is. Do you trust it? But look, it's going to be a problem in the elections. I think you're going to see videos that are put out that are, not done by campaigns, that aren't real, that, and we're going to see more and more of this. But just like in COVID, when the Biden administration, ultimately tried to get social media companies to shut off everything because it was, wasn't AI, but it was this idea of stuff that isn't true. Then we kind of learned some of the rumors were maybe true. I mean, it's hard. Is
there no disclosure requirement on using AI in a campaign either? There's not. Okay.
No. In fact, we talked about, like Mandama used it really well. The Cuomo campaign used it really well in the mayor's race.
Oh, that's right. Where they had, okay, you're right.
Yeah. Look,
do you think that changes at some point, or do you like,
yeah, I think there's going to want to be people who regulate it. But to Dan's point, explain to me, how do you do it?
You just put a little bug on the bottom of the scrreen saying this is a video generated by AI.
Right. So in other words, the people who are abiding by the law will do it, and then everyone else won't.
No, I don't mean on social media is a different animal, because that's like a whole bunch, but I was just talking about political campaigns. I could see that being a requirement at some point, but
maybe. I have a hard time thinking right now you're going to get agreement on anything. And
for sure,
I know this sounds like a silly thing, but so if I generate something in AI, like what's the threshold? Is it that if I use a video for more than 5 seconds? Is it if I alter anything, if I edit it? Is that videos have been edited going back to since TV,
Sure.
So what's the threshold? That's going to be the other problem that you face.
Okay, let's take another question. Did open borders increase demand for housing supply and demand?
Yes.
Do you agree, Dan?
Did open border increase? Sure. Look, supply and demand. Anytime there's more people demanding a good, a service, a widget, it makes more competition and raises prices. But I do, in the bigger picture, I think this is way more than just immigrants. It is just, we need more housing. We need to build more. We need to make it easier to renovate, convert, and build.
Yeah, I mean, it's inflation prices. It's like shortage of labor.
It's
I
everything.
was going to say, if this was the only issue, though, we'd start to see a turn, right? Because of
Totally.
the border being closed and prices are still, going up. So, okay, maybe one more. Do we have one more?
Sure.
Maybe not. We're at 9:31 anyway. Sean, what do you got coming up on your show today?
Look, we got Adam Kincaid coming on. He runs all the redistricting on the Republican side. So if you want to know where we are, we're going to literally go state by state. We've done this before. Redistricting is pretty much done. There's obviously Florida is outstanding, but we're going to go state by state, find out who's up, who's down, what we think this is all going to mean for the midterms. So if you are a political junkie, tune in tonight, state by state. We'll go through them all.
All right, guys, we will be back tomorrow, 8:30. Welcome back to Monday. Hope you all have a good week.
Enjoy.